There are different kinds of beings. There are all kinds of humanoids, but high vibrational. There are the elven beings, the fairy folk. There are unicorns, there are dragons, there are like all these extinct species, let's say, and they live there in harmony. So at one point they shared this matrix with us, but it has become too dense for them. So they crossed over. And from my experience, one of the crossing points is the inner earth.
Iva Kenaz, welcome to Passion Harvest. Gosh, this is going to be a fascinating conversation today and one of my many favorite subjects. Welcome to Passion Harvest.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about this.
You're welcome. I'm excited too. I'd love to start with your experiences with parallel worlds.
Being inspired by various people, I created my own method of traveling through what I call the inner source, like my source, and connecting to my wider or larger consciousness, and then going to the places that my soul feels comfortable in. So where my dear ones are, or where my soul returns to, all these parallel worlds. And I just started to explore them, and I realized like that I had more incarnations in these parallel worlds than here. And it's like the more I explored, the more excited I was. So I started to like journal about it, and it's now been about 10 years of this kind of journeying, and the last 3 years have been really intense. So I've kind of closed myself in our countryside home, and I've been really focusing on journeying and all the things that I found out. I was just so full of the information that I wanted to share about the different worlds, especially the elven realms and inner earth, that I started to write my new book, Parallel Worlds, to be able to share it. Because I feel like many people are from these worlds, they're incarnated here, but there's not much, we don't really talk about it much in the spiritual communities, or it's more about maybe the different extraterrestrial races, or worlds within the universe, but not so much the parallel. So yeah, it's been
Incredible.
a journey.
And a big congratulations on your book, Parallel Worlds. Congratulations.
Thank you.
One of
Thank you
many.
so
So, what is your technique or method to transport yourself to these parallel worlds?
I created a method of connecting with the inner source. I call it the zero dimension, the point where all the other dimensions meet. It's really where our source connects with the source of the divine consciousness, the divine love, creativity, what some people view as God. So, and then we can expand into any place that we find comfortable. And it works. I now started to teach it to other people here in Czechia, in Prague. And I really encourage people to use their fantasy and their originality and their creativity, because I figured out that that's really the key element that can trick the matrix, because the matrix guardians sometimes try to block us from expanding our consciousness beyond the limitations of this world, this material world. So when we use our originality and creativity, we kind of trick it, because the matrix is really good at copying, but not so much at good at originality and creating, with this original spark that we've been blessed with. So and what I mean by creativity and originality is, if you put your own you create your own portal. So some people are comfortable with imagining a tree. Trees are wonderful portals. Some people prefer to go into a cave. Some maybe descend into a well and then project into some higher dimension. And some use symbols. I use symbols a lot, because they can have, we can give them various meanings. We can give them a protective meaning, so we can have a protective symbol for the journey, or then like a symbol that actually is our portal, and it's good to create our own personal symbol that is a portal that we don't share with anybody, and it's our like private portal to these parallel homes. So this has really helped me also, because the symbols are, they're like from this two-dimensional world. And I know that sometimes, people view it that the dimensions are lower and higher in terms of this hierarchy that we're used to. But I find like it's more about a wider or narrower perception. And the 2D world I found is really this world of the shapes, of the symbols, of the runes, of these geometries that this 3D world is made of. And it really helps us, this second dimension. It has nothing to do with frequency. It's not that it would be like lower frequency. It's just a different reality that actually helps us reach our first dimension and the source. And through that, we can go anywhere we like. I noticed that the source, some call it the void, some call it like the absolute, or the 0 point, or the point, the center point. There are many words for it.
This is absolutely fascinating. I can talk to you for hours, but in the concepts of time. So for those that haven't experienced or aren't sure, what are parallel worlds and what do they look like?
There are just so many. There are countless, infinite possibilities. But I can only talk from my experience. So my parallel worlds that I'm become most used to throughout my incarnations is the parallel, I call it soft density Earth. So it's also 3-dimensional, but it has access to wider consciousness. And there are probably countless many other different density Earth. There are different beings living there that no longer live here in this matrix, but from my understanding, we started off as being softer density, and then something happened and we kind of got looped in this matrix, but then like we're supposed to get back on this original timeline of the soft density Earth. And it seems like many beings from this actually parallel Earth incarnate these days into the matrix to be able to figure it out, why it happened and why this loop has happened and why there's so much duality and negativity. There's basically inherent cruelty in our nature. Even it's not just, nature is quite cruel, the food chain and all that. So they're trying to figure out what happened, that it diverted kind of from this very peaceful and harmonious timeline that I consider like the main one from my point of view. And the beings there are different kinds of beings. There are all kinds of humanoids, but high vibrational. There are the elven beings, the fairy folk. They have been called, different names. There are all these kind of mythical animals and beings that we know from legends. So there are unicorns, there are dragons, there are like all these extinct species, let's say, and they live there in harmony. So at one point they shared this matrix with us, but it has become too dense for them. So they crossed over. And from my experience, one of the crossing points is the inner Earth, the innermost core of the Earth. That is actually softer density. So that part of the Earth, the core, still connects us with this parallel soft density Earth. But then I also visit places that I consider of like wider consciousness. I think it's something like 5th or 6th dimension, where we already like create our own reality. So we create our own worlds within maybe larger worlds that can be co-created with our soul group or our family souls. There are various kinds of heavens, there are various kinds of worlds. And that's what I call in the book prime reality, because I feel like that's where the soul is really free to create and be whatever. And we can work with time, we can work with space. It's just wonderful. And there are all kinds of fairy realms and elven realms there. There's so many. So it's really like a rich existence, but these are my main focus, like let's say this wider dimension or higher dimension, if you will, of the fairy realm, and then the parallel earth and the inner earth.
So fascinating. So what does it look like? Does it look like Earth? I just answered your question, but what does it look like?
The parallel, the soft density
Yeah,
earth.
yes.
It looks very much like the earth how it was planned to be originally. So it has the same nature, but the trees and the plant life is more alive there. So it can actually like move and change form. I've met like trees that would walk and like offer me their fruit, and it's just very beautiful how everything is alive. So even the grass or nature there, like you feel like you're one with it when you walk over it, or you kind of hover. You don't really like touch the ground, you hover over it. So everything is in motion and alive, and everything is in some kind of a harmony. But there has been, as I understand, like their timeline has been also corrupted by evil, but in a different sense than here, because they have soft density bodies, so they cannot feel pain, they cannot really feel so much pressure, but they do suffer when they're being transmuted or like distorted. And as I understand, on that timeline they've been having problem with dark magic, dark magicians, and they had even these magical wars. So they're really trying to figure out why evil comes to their world, and why it even exists, and has the need to maybe like mess with these softer density beings. And so that was surprising to me, because in such a harmonious world, like then you learn that they also have this problem with evil. And what I recently learned, which I find quite interesting, is that some of these elven beings, or the beings that I feel like I'm part of in that parallel earth, they incarnate here to kind of investigate or trying to figure out why there's so much negativity, of course balanced with good, but why, like what's the psychology of evil? It's kind of like being like a psychiatrist of why do some people like do such bad things, and they try to figure it out to be able to fight the dark magic in their world. It's really like a fairy tale. It sounds like a
Wow.
fantasy
So
movie. But,
thank you. So how are you experiencing this, in a sleep state or a meditation or while you're awake?
in sleep, I've been traveling there since I was very young. But now when I go there with the intention, I kind of go through the source, and then as I expand my consciousness, I feel like I'm here and there in parallel. So it's when the consciousness expands, I feel really large, and then I just start to sense, with the intention to connect to that place, I start to sense my parallel self. So I am grounded in this physical body, but my consciousness is connecting to that parallel body, let's say the parallel body. And in this parallel earth, I have a different body that is kind of like resting while my consciousness is incarnated here. So I sometimes, as I've been really intensely journeying, I sometimes get these sudden memories of that parallel body. And sometimes, I have to block it off to be able to function here, because it would become too strange. But I understand that it's some kind of a place where they take care of us, these like travelers between worlds. They take care of the bodies, and we're connected to some kind of they say it's some flower essences that the body is sustained by. So there's some kind of fibers around us that like fill us with this kind of honey like essence or something that keeps the subtle density body alive while our consciousness travels. And from what I understand there, I might be lying. There's different time there. It runs differently. So if I'm lying there incarnating here for 10 days, I might experience 100 years here, and while it's 10 days there. So it's like a totally different time frame.
Incredible. And so do you look like Eva now in the other world?
No, I look completely different. The bodies there are so beautiful. They're like they're luminous. They're kind of crystalline in a sense that they're like transparent, and I can see all my organs, but they are even like the liquid. It's not really blood. It's more like some rainbow liquid that runs through the body, and the organs are like rainbow colored. They're beautiful. They're not like, you know, this like flesh and blood like we have here. They're really beautiful bodies, and they have they like the elven beings usually have white kind of translucent hair or very dark hair. So like the swans, I will maybe get to that why they are likened to swans. Uh, so either very dark black or white hair. I have white hair in that parallel incarnation.
Beautiful. You, gosh, I've just got so many questions, but you mentioned the matrix, and sometimes it can stop us from connecting to those worlds. What is the matrix, and why does this happen, or stop us from remembering our connection to source?
Well, it's if I may take it a bit wider to my memory of my first incarnation here, because my first incarnation here was when the matrix was being set up. So I remember when we came here as the elven beings from the Swan or the Cygnus constellation. We still saw the Earth as being soft density, but there was some kind of, as I understood it, there were all kinds of beings here, all kinds of different species, and they started to experiment with dense matter, making the matter more dense. And they created even these bodies, like these dense bodies that to me it felt like spacesuit. And they kind of encouraged us to go with our soft density body into these dense bodies that were prepared for us already, and to be able to like function in this new dense earth that they are creating. And I know that some beings already didn't resonate with this new project. They felt like there was something strange about it, and that was actually the inner earthers. So they then retreated into the inner earth, but or just basically avoided this new earth that was being built. So it was something like the soft density earth was still there, but they were creating something of a more dense um, material kind of world. And these bodies felt like we were like in spacesuits, but we still remembered where we came from. We still remembered our soul, our essence. But then the project started to get more intense. Certain beings wanted to like experience more like being within a certain time and space, really like kind of trapped, so that it's more intense experience. So they started to limit our consciousness, and they started to basically like block our memories of who we were. And then when these bodies started to like evolve and even be able to multiply, there started to be this chain of like you know, being born and not remembering where we come from, and then like being all confused, and that really felt like a prison to many of us. And that's when my elven kin decided to not participate in this, and there were all kinds of like wars happening then, and we ended up going to the inner earth to cross over to the soft density earth, and just continue from then on there. So we never really resonated with this new matrix or this new kind of dense, very dense matter, where the soul or the essence like forgot about what it was, and it was like a torment for us. Really, it felt like a torment to forget. um, and also these sensations that the bodies had, like the pain and all that, it was totally new to us, because in the soft density earth and in this soft density universe and in our Cygnus home or swan home, we incarnated and died consciously. We were used to like enter the body consciously, the soft density body, and then leave it at will when we wanted to, unless of course the body was killed. That's also possible. But we had these healing abilities, and it was just a much freer way of experiencing the 3D or this kind of time space limitation than to be limited as much as we are in this current matrix.
It's just amazing that you can, I mean, you have access to all of this. I just want to backtrack. I've got questions, but portals, you just spoke of, which you spoke about before, there's different portals to access these worlds. Do you mind just talking a little bit more about you mentioned tree portals or symbols, just about the portals for those of the audience that are listening that may want to start, just a taster or tools and tips how to do this?
Yes, I also have more. I write about it in my new book, but okay, so like simply the tree portal is what I started with. I was taught this method by Ian Kate Sullivan, a fellow author and publisher who already has great experiences with these journeys. And she taught me to travel through the tree portals. And from that, it was amazing to me how well it worked. And I found my tree. With the tree portal, it's good to find a tree that you kind of sense, and sensitive people sense this, when a tree is a portal to another world, and which world also, because there may be different worlds. But I found my fairy tree portal, and through that I journeyed like through the tree, through the branches or through the roots. Some people like to just go through the trunk. Depends really where you go and with which intention. But the tree portal seems to work very well for people that are very connected with nature, with the plant life, and that are of the fairy origin or the elven origin, because that really connects well to these worlds and also to the inner earth. Then I also found this great way of traveling through the well. The well is a bit more scary to some people because like you go through this deep darkness, but it's kind of this comforting darkness where you are nothing yet everything. It's like this well of wisdom where the consciousness, everything is alive before it like expresses itself. It's like the state kind of in between, but full of all these potentials. So descending to the well is another way to journey this way. And then through the portal, it's really fast and easy if you imagine the symbol. Through the symbol, it's really quick. So it's also for people that maybe tend to fall asleep during these deep meditations or hypnosis. Like the symbol is really quick, so it gets you like where you want to be. And it's like I said, it's best to create your own portal symbol and put your own fantasy and creativity into it, so it's in tune with the essence, your essence, your soul.
Sounds amazing. I want to try it as well. Well, perhaps in some way I have, but that it's just wonderful. You mentioned the elven beings. Do you mind just talking about that and the Swan constellation? What is that? Who
Yes,
is
thank you
that?
so much for this question, because I'm really excited to share this.
Yay, me too.
Because it's something I think that hasn't been discussed much, or yet even in this in this it's probably been known in the more ancient history, but as I've been writing my book Parallel Worlds, I went into a research very deep research into Irish mythology and Norse mythology. That's my favorite mythologies. And I found this connection that I've already sensed between the Swan constellation or the Cygnus um, and the elves, because okay, there's so many reasons why I came to that, but very simply, in the original Norse language in which we first find a mention about the elves were called Alf or Alft or Alfur, Alfar, depending plural or singular, and the swan is Alft. So the elf is basically a swan. It's like very similar word. And that when I realized that, it really like clicked with the swan constellation. And then I found out that the elf also has some similarity to the words of swans, because in Middle Irish it's Ella, so the L is there. In Old Irish Elu, and in Celtic, Old Celtic Eli. So it's the Eli, Elu, Ella is somehow in the word elf as well. Um, so the words themselves, but then I also found all these amazing connections. And the author Andrew Collins, he wrote so many books about the Cygnus constellation and how it's connected to our most ancient sites on the Earth. And so the Cygnus seems to be really important to these like most ancient. And also in Ireland, the Newgrange, which is like a very known portal into the world of the She, which is another word for these fairy folk or elves, or the Tuatha De Danann, which is the same beings. It's the people of goddess Anna. Sometimes it's called she's called Dana, but I recently found also that the D is just a shorter version of Dea, so like goddess Anna, Dana. And she's really like the mother goddess, the soul of the earth, like the Greek Gaia. So Anna, Amma, sometimes also called by the elven beings. So these are all the same beings, and Newgrange has some connection, as Andrew Collins found out with his team of researchers. It has a connection to the Cygnus constellation as well. And there's also this legend about the swan god and his swan bride turning into swans, and he lived at Newgrange in Ireland. And there are so many stories about swans and this kind of like turning into swans, not only in Ireland, you know, in Greek mythology, we know also from the Hindu mythology, like there are some swan gods, or there's kind of this motif of transforming into the swan. So it seems like there was some kind of divine beings, and they were probably the what we now call elves or elves. And why it's also so important is because like the word alf and alfor and alfar is Icelandic, and in Icelandic all the like key mythologies were written. The prosaic Edda, the prose Edda, the poetic Eddas were all written in Iceland in this language. And Iceland is, not many people know that, but thanks to my husband, he's Icelandic. I know a lot about Iceland, and I know that they're like half Norwegian, half Irish, actually, the people there. So there's a lot of connection between Ireland and Iceland and these mythologies. And now they're finding even these like really ancient um, buildings, Irish or Celtic buildings in Iceland. So it's all connected, these mythologies, and you find these traces of the swan symbolism and the connected with the elves and also with the giants, which was another race. So it's just so much to talk about when it comes to the swan and the elves.
And what about fairies?
That's, I think, the same race, because the elven, as I see them or as I meet them, there are different kinds of fairy folk or elven beings. Some of them are taller, some of them are really tiny, or they can transmute also from tiny to taller. There are different kinds of fairy folk, and again, Irish and Norse mythology is great at like depicting all these different beings. The hops I'm very much in contact with. They're really lovely. They inspire Tolkien for the Hobbit characters.
Yes.
So the hops are like kind of like um, in the height of a 3 or 4 year old child, and they're very friendly, very sweet. And I feel like they're all the elven and the fairy folk and the Irish She and the Tuatha De. It's really like uh, the same beings, just they're just called differently, and also in different parts of the world. Um, and there are different types of these fairy folk beings or these elven beings. Um, and they can also work with like transmuting their form, some of them. So they can really maybe show,
Shapeshift or
yes, they can shapeshift from, let's say, a bird to a fish, and then into the elven being, or then they can even show up in an element. So they can communicate with us variously, but they usually communicate with people that have some connection to their worlds, or that they know wouldn't, try to take advantage of their kindness, because they're really kind and high vibration.
And what is their, well, I guess what is humans' role, but what is their role on the parallel worlds?
Their role, well, they're also humans. They co-live there with humans. It's not just the elven or the fairy folk, but their role, I'm not sure role, but I know that they're very interested in arts and nature science. They work a lot with crystalline energy. And I think their role, like, it seems to me that they're really just like enjoying the world and creating, and they're just really happy to enjoy the creation and create, and they really love arts and this kind of like higher science of, crystalline energies, and they also live for trying to figure out why the evil is, and to be able to heal it in their world. But it seems to me always that they just have this pure like joy from existence and from like, living in their world
Just
and
being,
enjoying its
which is really how we should all be. You mentioned
And
the crystalline. I've heard, or maybe even experienced, the crystalline grid. What is that, and where is that? The crystalline grid? Is there like a
yes,
maybe
yes, around,
I'm using a different term.
yeah, I like the crystalline grid of the earth.
Yes, or
Yeah.
inside the earth.
Mhm. Well, I have experience with the core crystal of the inner earth, and maybe I should say also that the inner earth is also like a very kind of rich topic, because I, I s- I learned to separate it into the subterranean earth, the inner earth, and the inner earth core, which is the crystal. There's this like crystalline world. And it's amazing to me that I've been journeying there for quite some time. And now, recently, as I've been writing my book, I found out that they actually found that the earth really has a crystalline core. Uh, and I didn't know that, because we always learn about the hot magma and then about the iron core. And within that iron core, there's a crystalline core in about the size of Texas, and there's even a reservoir for water. So it seems like even maybe in the physical sense, there could be life inside the earth, but I really find it like a softer density, like a parallel world. And the crystal, it stores the consciousness, the history, and everything of the earth. So it's really like the core. It's like the core of like our heart. It's being likened, when I ask about it, it's being likened to like the heart of the earth, but also in a spiritual sense, that just vibrates so much love and so much creative potential. So the beings there, the inner earthers, the innermost inner earthers, they protect it. And that's like, I've also, the goddess Anna or Amma is really like the soul that protects this core heart. So the crystalline energy is also important because it connects. The soft density body seems to be kind of crystalline, and I even sense like they have something like we have pineal gland. They have this crystal inside their head that connects the minds when they want to, so they can be more telepathic and connect to their people and also to the planet. So it's all connected so harmoniously. It's really like the crystalline cores are kind of like the bones of the earth on both physical and the metaphysical or spiritual level. But then like as in this dense earth, we have these layers of the subterranean earth that is not so high vibrational. There are actually different extraterrestrials living there that are known in mythologies as goblins. For example, we see them as the Greys or the different reptilian beings. And so there are different races that kind of like rule over the subterranean part, and they in a way block us from being able to have a contact with the pure inner earth, which is that has been like the biggest blockage for us. And we find in many mythologies, the Egyptian Amenti or the Greek Elysium, that the souls often travel to the inner earth rather than the sky, to pass over to their uh, original homes. And I think that's like the inner earth, because what I found is that in the inner earth there are all these portals to the softer density earth, or earths, there are many, or to the wider dimensions. So this subterranean kind of area is really tricky because it's low vibrational, even more than the surface earth. And below that, like between the inner earth core crystalline world and this subterranean kind of blockage, let's say, there's a realm of the elves, or of the Cygnus people, that they can travel between the soft density universe. It's a different parallel universe, and the inner earth, and this like kingdom they have. And how I've learned to understand like what they live for, or as you asked, what these elven beings in that kind of world live for, is really protecting the earth. And they're very protective of us, humanity, as well. They consider us family, distant relatives. So I know from a few friends in that world that they've been, now it's been really tough on the soft density earth, because there's a war for soul, as they say. So they try to help us a lot here to get rid of these low vibrational influences in the subterranean earth and around the planet, which is also, like you said, the crystalline grid. They're trying to like affect and kind of get through that protective shell, these different entities.
The lower vibrational beings.
Yes.
Right.
And these elven friends from Cygnus are trying to protect the planet and us from it, because as I understand, if this planet is affected by it and us, they will also be affected by it. So it's kind of like they're trying to help, and
It's a win-win situation.
yes. It's just, I think these days they really want to be seen and be known again. There was a period when they preferred to be hidden, and I feel like now they're trying to communicate with us again.
Are
Some of
they
us.
are they succeeding in their attempts to rid inner earth of lower vibrational beings that affect humans as well? And I mean, look at the planet now.
Yeah, I think they are, and I think there are more elven incarnates here now. So like we're trying to kind of reconnect with what the earth used to be. From what they told me, we are like now this loop, this timeline of the matrix. We are in the evolution, or in the journey, or whatever we would call it. We are kind of in the middle point, and it's the point, like they likened it, because I studied story structure and screenwriting, so they liken it to me as the midpoint in the hero's journey, or the, you know, like the in a movie or in a story, the middle point is usually when, you know, it's sometimes like the entrance to the innermost cave, like we go and we figure out like all the good and bad, all the darkness comes up, you know, the light is there to balance it, and we kind of like figure what the whole journey is about, and maybe who have been our allies, who have been our enemies. And it's this part of the story when the hero really goes through most inner change, to be able to then, through the second half of the story, kind of defeat the enemies, let's say, and go back to the wholeness. So that's how they liken it, to this kind of midpoint in our development. That's why I think all these things are coming up, you know, and that's why people are more open again to like discovering what has been happening to our world, to our planet.
And when you journey to parallel realities, parallel worlds, can you avoid the lower vibrational beings?
Yes, that's when I try to go into the fourth dimension or the astral, I usually like avoid it. I jump over, because I it's quite tricky. Like you can get stuck in a certain like lower vibrations and different worlds. And I know that um, I found authors now that speak and write about it. David Icke and Isabella Green. They are like
They've both been
describing.
on the show.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's yes. So they're like I resonate with them so much because when I traveled to these or when I tried to go there, I just saw really like nasty things and I saw exactly like these gray aliens kind of trying to force the souls through different trickery into the repetitive reincarnation cycle. And I heard the souls scream that they don't want to go anymore. So there's something is happening there that some souls can be tricked into like unconscious incarnation or repetitive cycle of reincarnation, this kind of samsara or like the endless loop. So I try to avoid that. Like for being that is incarnated from the parallel, like I guess it's a different process because I have this like parallel body. So it seems like I incarnate, or we, like the beings from the parallel world, seem to incarnate a bit differently from what I understand. But I am aware of this matrix levels of the reincarnation kind of. I don't know what to call it.
Well,
Circus.
I think Isabella Green calls it the reincarnation trap.
Yes, yes, exactly. I resonate with that so much.
So what's your advice when we leave our physical body? How do we not get stuck in the trap?
Well, I think to know, that's why I think it's so important to find where where you come from and to reconnect with your source. Uh, Isabella Green calls it the void. Um, I call it the source, but it's the same thing. I think like to go to really like understand your source, who you are, your essence, and your parallel homes that you know before you came here. Because if you make this connection, the heart connection with those places, you are less likely to be tricked into some other unconscious or unwanted incarnation. But that's just my opinion, or um, I think so. And also to learn to deal with manipulation, because sometimes these entities or these archons, they can manipulate the soul through guilt or through, you know, promises. And I found that, and recently it's everywhere. You read about narcissism and these different like toxic people and toxic personalities that kind of um, you know, it's just popping up a lot, this theme, I noticed. And I found that also in my experiences, because I have experiences, unfortunately, really big ones with narcissistic people and these kind of toxic people. So if you learn to like deal with them, if you learn in this incarnation to deal with their tricks and their manipulation, it's really a great practice for this kind of, if they try to manipulate you on like a bigger level, let's say, or on the spiritual level, because they really seem to function in a similar way, like through making you feel guilty or pushing all the blame on you and trying to seem like there's like that they are not at fault or nothing is their fault and it's all your fault, or they're trying to trick you with something, some glitter, you know, like they're like promises, false promises and stuff like that. So that's just my kind of
No,
experience.
thank you. I'm thinking now, well, maybe that was the reason I had to have those experiences.
Ah, okay.
There's always a reason.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you one of my favorite topics, dragons.
Oh, okay.
Do you mind sharing about the dragons?
Yes. Oh, I would love to,
I
because I
love
have a dog
dragons.
dragoness at home. Um, I wrote a fairy tale about all my animals because they're in the parallel worlds, different beings, and our dog is the dragoness. And and she's black like your dog. And the black dogs, by the way, are like in Ireland, they're considered magical because they're like the she dogs. They're the guardians of the fairy realms. But yes, so the dragons are from, I only know what I know from my dog friend from what she tells me. So they do exist in this parallel soft density earth that I like to go to or incarnate to, and in the inner earth. And they're really fierce protectors and guardians and guides. And they're different from, you know, the low vibrational reptilian beings. I know some people tend to confuse, and that's something totally different. I don't even want to talk about that. But yeah, it's they are very fierce protectors and guides, and if they incarnate, it's quite hard for them. Like what I know, Mera, my dog friend, it's really hard for them to incarnate into these bodies in this matrix because it's so contained. Like they're so used to being free and fiery, and when they are contained in this body, they're kind of like they get a bit anxious, and they need a lot of freedom and express. They're very expressive. But that's just my experience with my dog Dragoness. There might be different kinds of dragons. She's a fire dragon, so she's very interesting. She's not afraid of fire, but she's afraid of water. It's interesting. So yeah, it's just my personal experience.
Thank you. Now I'd love to talk about the beautiful symbols that you've created, or symbols in general.
Symbols.
You mentioned
That's
symbols for protection or for accessing portals, or I'll pass it over to you.
yes, thank you. Well, that's a big part of my research. I wrote many books about that because sacred geometry and symbolism and the runes are such like rich dimension. Like I said, it's like for me it's like the second dimension, where all the possible shapes are created, and our world is made of certain geometries and shapes. So they're very like neutral. I know throughout history, of course, they have been misused. So many people are afraid of certain symbols because they have been misused by the dark magicians and different kinds of agendas. But then they're like, but they're neutral. You know, they're so powerful, so they were misused. But they have this positive and very powerful side, and it really depends on how we work with them, how we use them. It's like a knife, you know, you can cut a slice of bread or you can hurt somebody. It's a tool. It's a really powerful tool. So in my life experiences, I've had only the best experiences with the symbols and the runes. I guess it's because the intention was always good and for doing good things or for attracting certain things. And also, I just found out that since I've been working with geometries and symbols, that my consciousness have been really like widening, and certain symbols really help, like the flower of life, to expand into the larger dimensions, and also are actually powerful portals. So they have various, like there are different symbols that we can work with for various reasons, and the runes are really like the smaller elements of the larger symbols. I found that the runes are like these codes of creation, and again, they have been like, some people fear them because they have been also widely misused. But it's all about like going to the core of what they really mean. That it's just these like construct pieces of reality. And why they are so powerful is because our reality, our bodies, everything is made of these symbols. If we go into sacred geometry, that all these symbols come from, really. We find out that it's everywhere. It's in our DNA. It's in the water molecules. It's in the atom. It's everywhere. We are geometries. So that's why they're so powerful, because they can go into the core of existence. And if we work with them in harmony with the existence and in harmony with our self and our soul and the good, then they can really work magic. But that's again my experience.
Well, this is your show today, so that's and for those that are not listening and watching, behind you there is a symbol on the wall behind you.
Yes, I like to have this one. My mom painted it for me for protection, and it has the 8-pointed star, different variations of the 8-pointed star, which is a really powerful symbol of a shield, protective shield. but also of manifestation, because it has these two crosses or two squares together. It's like a double the material symbolism that is in the cross or the square. It helps manifest things.
Good. Well, a big congratulations on your book, Parallel Worlds.
Thank you.
Where it's great. Where's the best place for people to connect with you?
I have a website. I have a YouTube channel. I am not so rich on social media, so I'm only on Facebook. But yeah, and I have my books on Amazon and everywhere else, so online.
And I will leave a link below to your website in the show notes. So it's ivakenaz.com. But I will leave a link.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh,
Okay, thank you so
I've
much.
absolutely loved talking to you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the Passion Harvest that audience that I haven't asked you today?
Maybe there was a little sign from the fairy folk today. It's been really blessed because I get signs from the elves or the fairies or the she when there are like some important events, and I feel like there came a message today because they hit this. They sometimes hide things, then I find them in strange places when they give me signs. And this time they hit this. I have the flower of life here, this necklace, and I felt like it was some message for someone who is watching, or maybe for everybody, about the geometries and the flower of life, that it's somehow important today. I'm not sure how yet, but it came as a strong message. So maybe that's what I would say. Yeah.
Thank you. Iva Kenaz, thank you so much for being on Passion
Thank you.
Harvest. I think we'll have to have you back on the show.
Thank you so much. This
That
has
was
been so
great.
great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.